Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jake Stu.
And today we are talking about The Mummy Returns. Released in 2001, directed by Stephen Sommers, written and directed by Stephen Sommers, actually, and starring Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo, Oded Fehr, Patricia Velasquez, Freddie Boath, or both, and, of course, The Rock. Not yet Dwayne Johnson, not even Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but just The Rock as the Scorpion King. This was actually, I guess that's kind of the big thing about this movie is it was his very first debut. Movie. Yeah, It was his motion picture debut. And I forgot he's not really in the movie that much.
No, he's not. I think he has like maybe 7 minutes of screen time.
Right, yeah, it's not much at all. So it's kind of interesting he chose this to be his first. I wonder if because there was a Scorpion King spin-off movie. So I wonder if that was part of like the contract or something, but
probably.
But yeah, this was wrestler turned movie star. It's kind of weird because he's such a big movie star now. It's almost weird to think about him as just a pro wrestler and this is his first movie, but this was his first outing as an actor. And so he wasn't credited as Dwayne Johnson, he was just credited as The Rock.
Yeah, he often credits Brendan Fraser as helping him get his movie career started.
Nice.
He kind of championed for him to be in the movie. So
right. That's cool. That's really cool. This was, of course, the sequel to The Mummy.
Yeah.
And like I said, released in 2001. I believe I saw this in the theater. I don't really have much of a memory of it other than the CGI towards the end. But that was pretty much it. I actually didn't really remember anything else about this movie other than just the fact that it was The Rock's first movie and he shows up at the end looking terrible.
I did not see it in the theater. It came out during the summer of what year did this come out?
2001.
2001. So I was in the 5th grade. Came out during the summer, and this was during the time when my mother was just not on it when it came to taking me to the movie theater. So I was the last one of my friends to see it. Luckily, nothing was really spoiled for me, other than the Rock only being in it for a couple of minutes.
Right.
Which, that didn't bother you. I didn't really care. I was 11 years old at the time, so whatever. But when I did finally see it, I was like, yo, that was awesome. Not as good as the first one, not nearly as good as the first one, but still a solid entry in the franchise, a solid sequel. There's some things that I really like about it. There's some things that I don't quite like about it, but while not as good as the first one, I think it has almost the same amount of watchability as the first one, at least for me, just for different reasons than the first one. One of the things I love the most about this movie is the new character of Alex O'Connell. Yeah, I really like Alex.
That's cool because I was going to say a lot of times with these sequels, when you add a child into the mix, it's just recipe for disaster.
It is, but I think this works because the way the kid is written, the way Alex is written, his personality is a perfect blend of Rick and Evie. He's adventurous and courageous like Rick, but he is very competent and curious like Evie, and incredibly smart. So I know we're going to talk about this movie eventually, but Tomb of the Dragon Emperor doesn't really, it kind of feeds off of that and tries to make him a grown-up version of that. Doesn't really work, but little kid Alex, I love little kid Alex.
That's cool. He's not as annoying as, other child characters in other movies, so I didn't really have a problem with him. I did think, though, when he was on screen, especially in the beginning when he's, like, using the slingshot against, like, the robbers or whatever that are also in the tomb, I did think to myself, like, I hate when they add children to these franchises.
Yeah.
but
because they start doing children things.
Right, yeah, I guess. But he actually wasn't. He wasn't. Now like you said, he wasn't actually too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really think about it, but you're absolutely right. I guess he is kind of a perfect blend of Rick and Evie.
Yeah,
and he is smart, but he did. I mean, I was gonna say he's kind of dumb, but I don't really know.
He's a kid. He's not.
Yeah, he's a kid.
That smart.
Right. No, that's true. It's
but
also
he's smarter than most kids.
He opened the chest and put the bracelet on.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was more out of curiosity. It wasn't like he was trying to do anything, wrong.
Right, and he gets that from his mother because she did the same thing in the first movie. She was reading from the book out of curiosity.
Right.
But it was clearly the stupidest thing you could have possibly done.
Well, she also kind of does it in this movie when she finds the bracelet. And she takes it and the whole place starts crumbling and she's like, put it back. And Rick is like, well, I think it's a little late now.
Yeah, I like the opening of this movie. I like when they're on that expedition and they're looking for the bracelet, and there are some callbacks to the first movie. One of those is when they take the bracelet and the place starts crumbling, the pillars start falling all around where Alex is, which is a callback to the library scene in the first movie, which I loved. I got
to give Stephen Sommers credit for that shot because I actually really thought it was pretty well done. It's obviously a stunt double on the first column as it tips over, and then the camera goes around the entire room, and as it gets to the end, the Alex, the actor, walks on into the frame all disheveled, and he's like, whoa. Like, I actually thought that shot and blocking was pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. With the addition of Alex comes a lighter tone because now you're appealing to a wider, younger audience.
Right.
A lot of the horror elements are absent from this movie, and it's pretty much a straight up adventure movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the first one was a blend of horror and adventure, even though I kind of wanted a little more horror in the first one.
Okay.
This one is not completely absent of horror, but almost.
Almost, yeah. I thought that too when I was watching it. I thought how the first one had those horror elements, and I thought that this movie was really missing that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I guess because they included a child, it was maybe geared a little bit more, not necessarily towards children, but like made it a little bit more family friendly, I guess you could say.
Yeah, they were just trying to expand the audience so they could make more money.
Sure, yeah. But I think the first one, it's missing that blend of horror that the first one has. And yeah, you could kind of say that when Imhotep is first resurrected and his body is not quite all there, that's a little, but that's not even that much.
It's barely scratching the surface of horror.
Right. So that was one of my complaints about the film, is that it doesn't have those horror elements or that nice blend of horror and adventure and comedy that the first one does. It's just adventure pretty much, which is not a problem. It's not a big deal.
It's just for me, and I guess for you too, it's a preference.
Yeah. Especially for these types of movies where it's because the original Mummy, the Boris Karloff Mummy, was a horror film.
Straight up horror, yeah.
Yeah, so I like that the first one was kind of a blend of horror and adventure. This one just kind of gets rid of the horror element altogether, and I feel like it's missing. Yeah,
so. Like that's what I loved about the first one. It was, let's put Indiana Jones in a horror movie,
right?
That's what the Mummy was, and I absolutely loved it. This one is just straight up generic not generic, but not name brand Indiana Jones.
right.
But it's still fun. It's still a solid movie. It does a lot of things well. One of the things is the character development with Evie. She's a different Evie in this movie. She's a lot more confident.
Mm-hmm.
She's learned a thing or two from Rick as far as self-defense and hand-to-hand combat. Like, she can hold her own very well in this movie.
Yeah. She even has like a fight scene with, I don't remember her name, but the woman that basically plays Imhotep's bride or whatever.
And Anck-su-namun. Yeah. Well, she's not Anck-su-namun in present
She's like
day, She's the reincarnation of
played by the same actress, which I did. Yes. I appreciated that too, and it was actually funny when she first shows up in the movie. I was like, man, she looks familiar. I was like, where have I seen her before? And I was like, oh right, The Mummy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I did kind of appreciate that Stephen Sommers was able to bring back number one Imhotep, but also whatever you said her name was. I can never remember her name.
Anaxunamun.
Thank you very much. So I kind of like that, and also including the whole Scorpion King thing, I guess. But yeah, that was nice. What did you think about? How do you feel about Evie's visions?
It was a little strange. I didn't feel that way watching it when I was younger.
Yeah.
Now that I know a little bit more about storytelling and movies, it feels a little bit out of place.
Yeah.
I think this goes way more into fantasy than horror.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those fantasy elements. So, on this last watch and actually the last few watches, it felt a little out of place, but it didn't bother me too much. As far as the storyline is concerned, it was kind of unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was kind of put there in order to have that fight scene with reincarnated Anaxunamun.
Right.
And because don't get me wrong, I kind of like it for Evie's character development, but again, it does feel a bit unnecessary because later in the movie they fight, she dies, and then they have to resurrect her, which you knew that was going to happen. But I remember watching it when I was a kid, and I was like, "Yo, they really killed Evie." And I didn't think she was gonna come back. I was 11 at the time. So, but yeah, like I said, watching it this time, it feels a little bit out of place and unnecessary, but it doesn't bother me a whole lot.
Right. I don't love it, but I kind of feel the same way. It's not like a deal breaker. It's not like it ruins the movie or anything.
But I think the movie would have been better without it, though.
Yeah, I agree. It just feels, like you said, it feels like if it had been established in the first movie that she had some sort of psychic ability and had visions like that occasionally, it would have been better. But because there was nothing like that in the first movie, it just feels like, why is she all of a sudden able to see these things?
Right. It would have been better if it was a payoff for something set up in the first movie rather than just a fantasy element shoehorned into the movie.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I don't think it's necessary because at first I was like, well, I guess they're doing it to kind of, do exposition so we can learn about the bracelet and things like that. But she's such a scholar.
Yeah. Her and Alex, you have two scholars in this movie. You don't need, you didn't need that for exposition.
Exactly. So It is kind of weird. It's like I said, it's not a deal breaker, but the movie would have benefited, I think, if they had not done that.
I agree. How do you feel about the inclusion of Imhotep's followers, like his cult, basically? They're led by the curator of the British Museum.
Yes,
and he's raising Imhotep.
I don't mind them. You got to have, obviously. Imhotep, if you want to bring him back, somebody's got to kind of resurrect him, I guess. So you kind of have some sort of followers or cult or something like that.
Yeah.
And I do like the I forget his name. He's the guy that played Killer Croc in Suicide Squad, but Adewale or something like that.
I think it's Adewale Akinkoyi.
Adewale Akinoye Agbahe.
Yeah.
Lakna is his character's name.
Yeah,
I liked him. I thought he was cool. He plays the character, pretty well. He's very, he's menacing, but he's also kind of, kind of plays it a little over the top. But it's kind of perfect for this movie,
Yeah, a little bit. And he is clearly an antagonist for Ardith Bay. He's the anti. He's. But I like that though.
Ardith Bay. I like that they brought Ardith Bay back too. But he's again his whole purpose in the first film was to kind of protect, that area, the tomb and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now that has all been, they did what they did in the first movie. It's like he's kind of on a new mission almost. So yeah, I agree.
Right.
They have I like the scene with Lakna and Alex, where Alex is purposefully trying to annoy him, going, "Are we there yet?" Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And he finally pulls out the knife, and it goes right in between Alex's fingers, and he's like, wow. He's like, perfect aiming. And he's like, what are you talking about? I missed. I thought that was pretty good.
I did too. I like their relationship. Yeah, this movie has some really fun and funny moments. One of my favorite moments in the movie was the chase scene in London after they escaped the house, and the mummies are chasing them, and they're like climbing on the buildings, and they have this whole fight scene on a double-decker bus. Right. I thought that was really creative and really fun.
Yeah,
it was very cartoony, but I like it. I really enjoyed it.
It was fun. Yeah, I agree. I think the effects of this movie are dated, but you got to, it was 2001, and I feel like a lot of the movies back then, the effects were cartoony and not great.
I think the effects of this movie, they're inconsistent because there are some scenes that look just as good as the first one. In particular, when Imhotep is resurrected, his mummy form still looks fantastic.
Yeah.
When he's transitioning into Imhotep, it actually looks horrible. Not lukewarm, but it actually looks really bad.
Yeah.
One scene in particular when they're attacking those mercenaries on the train, and he's like sucking the life out of them.
Right.
And there's a close up of him with his face like 2/3 of the way restored.
Like both eyes are there, but there's like still a hole.
Yeah. That is some of the worst CGI I have ever seen.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's another scene that doesn't look too great, which I kind of give it a pass because water is hard to do.
Right.
And that's when his face appears in the water wall.
Yeah.
When they're going through that like canyon thing.
Yeah. They're on like the flying boat thing.
Yeah. The dirigible.
Right, I think that's what it's called.
But I'll give them a pass for that. It looks bad, but water is extremely hard to do.
Yeah, and especially 22 years ago.
Yes.
So I could give that a pass as well.
Yeah.
I do have a heart, and some of those resurrected Imhotep, army guys who are climbing the walls, fighting on the double-decker bus and stuff. The double-decker bus fight is okay because it's a guy in a suit, and you can kind of tell that too. But like when they're climbing on the walls and stuff, it looks a little cartoony / video gamey. But even that I can kind of forgive because again, it was 21 years ago or 22 years ago, and special effects were fairly new then.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Imhotep's 2/3 face or whatever you want to call it. And then the rock at the end is just some bad effects.
It's pretty bad. And I think the bad thing about that was the texture. Like he looked too smooth. His face looked a bit distorted. And like I said, as bad as that is, I still don't think that was the worst CGI in the movie. I still think Imhotep on the train was the worst CGI in the movie.
You might be right. And that was like a big close up too.
Yeah. Because I'm watching the scene now where they're at the I think they're at the museum, and they're resurrecting Imhotep, and he still looks fantastic. It's like a small, very small step down from the first movie.
Yeah.
But he still looks really, really good to me.
You're a tiny bit ahead of me because they are currently trying to resurrect him. Some mummies just woke up. But he hasn't actually like broken out of that whatever he's in.
Yeah, they're about to get on the double-decker bus for me.
Oh, okay. I like that Jonathan is also still included in this film, and I do think it's kind of funny that he gets paired up with Alex. It's like Evie and Rick are like, you two stay here. We're going. So he's become kind of a babysitter.
Yeah.
He's not as funny in this. He's not funny, but he's not. I had more humor, more to do, I think, in the first movie than he does in this one.
I agree.
But I like that they at least, brought him back and included him.
No, I agree. And I think that's because he has a little bit less to do in this movie.
Yeah.
Because, they have brought on so many characters. They've expanded Ardith Bay's character. You got Alex, and you got I forget the black guy's name, but he's the pilot.
Oh yeah.
The other black guy,
right, right, the one with the gold teeth.
Yeah, the one with the gold teeth.
Izzy.
Izzy. Yeah, Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's the captain of the dirigible, and no, he gets some screen time. He gets some screen time with Jonathan. They go back and forth a little bit, which I appreciated. But yeah, it was I could see somebody getting the short end of the stick, right. Yeah, unfortunately, it had to be Jonathan because everybody else pretty much had something to do but him.
Right.
So at the end of the chase scene, I didn't take any notes, but I made a mental note of this. When Loch Nah takes Alex,
yeah,
why didn't Jonathan just start driving the bus?
I don't know. I thought that too. I was like,
Rick ran off
on foot
the bus on foot after a car when he was already in a vehicle. Yeah. All he had to do was drive. But then again, there wouldn't be a movie. So
I thought that too, and I can't remember. Maybe I'll see when the scene comes up. But and this is not really an excuse because even though it's a double-decker bus, you can still turn it around. But I thought the bus was facing like the wrong direction. Like maybe it would have taken too long to turn the bus around to follow the car, but still, you're gonna still catch up with it faster than you would on foot.
Yes.
So yeah, yes. I don't know. They should have put something in the movie where like the bus died or the tires popped or something.
Yeah,
so that way it made sense for him to not use the bus to go after.
Yeah.
Loch Nah and Alex. Yeah.
Because they raised the bridge, but there was enough time in between Loch Nah snatching Alex and the bridge being raised for
the
car
to
at least catch up to the other car.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Plot hole.
Just a thought. Just a thought. But maybe I'm thinking too much into it.
No, not really. I don't think so. I mean, maybe you could argue that his just initial reaction was just to immediately chase after the bus, but still, it's like Jonathan could have even, while he was running, turned the bus around. I don't know, but I don't know why why nobody decided to just start driving. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little strange to me.
Yeah.
But, hey, going back to The Rock, how do you feel about the Scorpion King's inclusion, like his backstory?
I liked it all right. That is one of my notes that I wrote, was in the beginning, it talks about this great warrior, and it shows the Scorpion King fighting with his army. Mm-hmm. And I guess because they called him like the great warrior or whatever, I just assumed he was winning. But then all of a sudden the narrator's like, the Scorpion King and his army were defeated, and I was like, oh, they lost. Okay.
He's not so great.
Yeah, all right. I guess they weren't doing so well. And then everybody but him dies, and him making the deal with the god. I liked all that, actually. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I did too. No, I liked it. I definitely enjoyed it. I did like the opening of this movie with the battle. I wish there was a little bit more lore to it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Because when the Scorpion King finally shows up, you're waiting for him for 2 hours, and when he finally shows up, it's a bit underwhelming, and this is exclusive. This has nothing to do with the CGI.
Right.
It's just I don't know. He didn't feel quite menacing enough, and then when he showed up, it was almost like he was just evil for the sake of being evil. He had there was no motivation for any of that. He's gonna wake up and that's it. Killing. He's just start killing people.
And he goes towards Imhotep first, but Imhotep is like, no, I'm one of your followers. He's like, but that guy tried to kill you, and immediately he's like, oh, King's like, what?
Okay,
you tried to kill me, Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I agree. It is a little over or underwhelming, especially when you think about like all the cool stuff Imhotep did in the first movie.
Yeah,
and his powers and everything, and even in this movie with his face in the water and.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think we'd have he's big and he's got a scorpion body, but that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, yeah. And even in the first movie with Emotep, when, you know, he has motivation. His motivation is love. Mm-hmm. The Scorpion King is just, you know, an environmental hazard. He's just right. He just happens to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Man, I feel like we talked about everything like really quickly.
Yeah, I do too. But yeah, I honestly don't know what else to talk about. But part of that, I think, is because, and maybe I should talk about this, but I honestly don't know, like you said, if it's the movie's fault or if it's just my own ADD. But I had a hard time focusing on it. And so, like, I just honestly don't remember especially a lot of the kind of second half of the movie.
Well, yeah, when the second act, when they're on the train, not a whole lot is happening. That, you know, it gets real, like, adventure movie-ish. You know, we got to go here, go here, go here, go here, which is fine. It doesn't really bother me too much, but I could see how you would be disengaged. Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention was the three mercenaries. They're only they're in the movie to get the. I think that they're getting the jars or whatever, the chest, but it also feels like they're only there in the end to get the life sucked out of them.
Yes. I think that's exactly why they're in the movie, because I don't really like those characters.
Neither do I.
I think they're kind of, it's almost like a rehash of the second team from the first movie, but not as good.
Yeah. Because those the characters in the first movie were all interesting. They were funny on there. Like when they had scenes by themselves, you were still engaged, even though Rick and Evie and Jonathan weren't in those scenes.
Right.
When they were just talking amongst themselves, they were so good. And I think that's not only a credit to the writing, but that's a credit to the actors as well. Like they had so much, the three of those guys had so much chemistry. And very, very distinct personalities. These guys, two of them kind of feel the same. Right. And then you got one who's a little bit of a coward. Right. Whereas, you know, in the first one, the all three of them had very distinct personalities. You had, you know, the nerd who was just there to make money, the courageous guy who was you know, pretty much like the alpha of the three of them. And then you had the other guy who was the coward. But it just, you know, they had a dynamic that the three of these guys are very, very much lacking. So again, I can see how that would disengage somebody from the movie.
Yeah, these guys feel almost like caricatures too. Like the coward is so scared. He's like
so cowardice. Yeah,
he's very cartoony. The other two aren't quite so cartoony, but they're just not that interesting. Yeah. The one guy who kind of knows the you know, the lore, you know, he's the one that's like, we don't want to wake the gods while they're in the temple and stuff.
Yeah, we must not wake the gods.
Yeah, he's
the French dude.
He's the most interesting out of the three, but he's still not that interesting.
Yeah, know? Right.
So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The only reason they're in the movie is to get the life sucked out of them, and that's it. And so it makes me think of how that can be done right, which is, have you ever seen The Usual Suspects?
No. Yes, I have once.
So Benicio del Toro's character in that movie, this is not a spoiler by any means if you haven't seen The Usual Suspects. Benicio, well, I guess it's a tiny bit of a spoiler.
Small spoiler alert, people.
Yeah, it doesn't spoil anything in the grand scheme of things. Oops, I just hit my mic. But Benicio del Toro's character does get killed in the movie, and he realized reading the script that is the only reason that character is in the movie, is to die. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to make that character memorable. And so that's why his character is like so difficult to understand. And, you know, there's this whole story where the actors on set couldn't understand what he was saying in real life. And they were going to the director going, I can't understand a word he's saying. And the director was like, well, make him say it again, you know? And so there's scenes in the movie where Benicio del Toro is like, and the other actors go, what?
What?
You know, and his character is like one of the best characters in the movie because Benicio was just a genius and decided to make the character.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's genius on Benicio del Toro's part. You know, knowing, you know, taking something bland and adding some flavor to it.
Yeah.
And doing it in such a brilliant way, and not necessarily, and that's also a credit to Bryan Singer for letting the actor do the rest of the work. So yeah,
because it could have been very easily, and maybe this did happen, and maybe Bryan Singer credit still maybe to Bryan Singer that he trusted Benicio, but like I can imagine them being on set for the very first day and Benicio starts mumbling like that, and Bryan Singer's like, "Oh my God, what am I doing? What is happening?"
I could definitely see that.
Could we try it again, Benicio?
This time, could you enunciate?
Right.
What do you think about Izzy?
I like Izzy. Okay, yeah, he's a bit of comedic relief, and he's I like him. I think he's pretty good. What about you?
I like him. He disappears for a while.
Yeah.
Once they get to the Oasis, but for the time he's there, I think he definitely serves his purpose for the comedic relief, and he gives a little bit of history for Rick, because he was friends with Rick. And he says, every time you show up, I get shot.
I do like how Rick, is like, you're not going to get shot. And then he finds out that he doesn't have a plane anymore. He's got a balloon, and he's like, you were right. You're going to get shot. You're going to get shot. He's like, I'm going to shoot you. And this also goes, again, it's not really a deal breaker, but this takes the movie again into kind of that fantasy setting. Mm-hmm. Like when he said he had a balloon, I was expecting like an actual hot air balloon, not a boat, hooked to a balloon like it is with the propeller on the back and everything.
Yeah.
So I do think that is a little, I mean, I know it's a movie about resurrecting Egyptian, whatever, but it makes the movie feel a little far-fetched,
a
in
little
this flying
bit.
boat. But again, I don't hate it. It's not like I said, it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I agree, but I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. I mean, this movie's not as good as the first one, like we said, but it does have character. That fantasy element kind of works for this movie, even though I prefer the horror element. Mm. So and I wonder
too if that was a note from. Not that,
like the studio?
Yeah, because even though the first movie made a lot of money, obviously, enough money to warrant a sequel, I wonder if the studio said, this time around, we want to have a little bit more family-friendly movie.
Yeah, I would definitely believe that, because, like I said, when you make it more family-friendly, the first movie was for the parents. Mm-hmm. The second movie was for the now those parents have children.
Right.
So
the children old enough to see the movies, or whatever.
Yeah. So. When the first one came out, the kids were 3 and 4. Now the the second one has come out. Now the kids are like 8,
right,
9.
They can see the movies. Yeah, they can go to the movies more.
Yeah, they can kind of see this. And they want the studios. It's all about the almighty dollar to them. So
yes, of course.
I could definitely see them saying that in order to bring more people into the theater.
Yeah,
fill some seats and put some fantasy stuff in there. Put something in there for the kids. Because it became a family franchise. I remember after this movie came out, there was an animated series that came out, like, I think the next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That's interesting.
And it was halfway decent. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible, though.
I'll be honest, this is, I think, the second time I've seen this movie. I may have watched it once, because I know I saw it in the theater, and I may have watched it one other time, like when it first came out on DVD or something. Mm-hmm. But I had no real memory of this movie. But same with the first. Like, I hadn't watched the first in a really long time. Yeah. And I'm actually kind of, even though I know it's the worst one, or at least that's the general consensus, I'm looking forward to watching the third one, because I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's not as good as this movie.
Sure.
But there are some elements of it that I really enjoy, and there's some good nuggets in that movie. But It's not great. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I'm expecting, I have low expectations, I guess you could say.
Yeah. It definitely has its moments of not great CGI.
And that one came out a lot later. That was like 2008.
Yeah, and it was a different director, and it felt like it was a different director. That was he did the first Fast and the Furious.
Rob Cohen, yeah.
Yeah, Rob Cohen.
And it was it's 2008. And it was written by Alfred Goff and Miles Miller, who created Smallville. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool.
That is cool. The music in this movie. I find it weird that I'm going to say this. This is very strange. But I like the music better in the first movie, even though the composer for this movie is way better than the composer in the last movie.
I'm trying to remember who did the music in the first movie here. It might tell me on the credits here. Jerry Goldsmith. I didn't want to get his name right. I didn't know if it was Goldsman or Goldsmith. But gotcha. Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, who is actually a very good composer.
He is. And I much prefer Alan Silvestri because he's Alan Silvestri.
Sure. Understandable.
And I don't dislike this movie's music. It has its own theme. Like they changed the theme for this movie.
I wonder why they did that. I wonder if it was because since Jerry Goldsmith wasn't going to do it, they didn't want to have to pay Alan Silvestri and Jerry Goldsmith to like use his music too. I don't know. Or maybe it was maybe Alan Silvestri said he would do it, but he wouldn't, I'm going to create my own music for it. I don't know. I'd be curious the reasoning behind that, but
maybe it's on IMDb trivia.
Yeah, maybe it is.
But I do like the music for this movie. I like the main theme, but that first movie, the music in that first movie, the main theme specifically,
it's really good.
Oh, so good. So good. And it also, again, I know we keep talking about it, but it had that horror element to it.
Yeah.
Not the main theme, but like the more atmospheric music, the music that played when Imhotep was being resurrected, and the 10 plagues were coming. It felt very ominous, and this didn't have that. It had a much more magical feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, it works for this movie because this movie is more of a fantasy element than it is a horror element. But it was something that I greatly missed.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I'm currently on the scene where the Evie in a vision is fighting a Noxunamor. It's a decent like fight scene.
Yeah, it's definitely a decent fight scene. And Evie is the daughter of the pharaoh. She's the princess. Okay. I think her name is Nefertiri.
Yeah, Anxunamon. Did I say her name right? I can't remember. Mila is her present day name, I guess. Mila.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just keep calling her Mila.
Yeah, call her Mila because you definitely butchered her name.
I don't know why I can't ever remember it, but yeah, I mean they say it a few times in this movie.
It's not an easy name. I only know it because I've seen these movies 1,000 times.
Yeah,
that scene was cool. The fight scene was cool. The costume design was on par with the first movie. One thing that I thought that I would prefer is the cinematography of the first movie.
Yeah.
Than this movie. That first movie had more of a grander feel to it. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like it had more. I don't know. I'm
in lost scope.
Yeah. It felt more epic. But then, it's just there's a certain there's a certain element that was missing from this cinematography, specifically the flashback scenes. It just, in the first movie, it felt like we were actually like in ancient Egypt. Like it felt a little bit more authentic. This did not quite feel as authentic. It felt like I was watching a movie. It felt like I was watching people pretend. Yeah. It felt like a sound stage, even though they were both sound stages.
That's kind of, yeah. But there was something about the first one that had a little bit more realism to it. Because that's how I felt in the beginning of the film when they were in the tomb in Egypt trying to find the bracelet. It felt fake to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what it was. It felt like you could just tell they were on a soundstage.
Yeah.
And that somebody had brought in the walls and put some sand on the ground and stuff. And so, yeah, there's something about the first film they did it. Maybe it was the production designer. It was the same cinematographer. I was trying to see if maybe what had really changed, but I don't know.
I was going to say it may have been the production design.
But there was also like some use of green screen in this film that wasn't in the first one, at least not that I remember. Like, when they're flying in this boat and Evie's having her visions of ancient Egypt.
Yeah. It's clearly green screen.
Yeah, she's standing there and you see the stars behind her and everything. I mean, it just looks...
And she just got this blank stare on her face.
Yeah, it just looks fake. Also, I didn't love the fact that she, like, jumps out of the boat because of her vision. I do like that Rick doesn't even think about it and just jumps right out after her.
Yeah, but why would she do that?
Yeah, exactly. It just was... You'd think
because even in the fantasy, I guess she was doing it because not the fantasy, but I guess she was doing it because she did it in the vision, the flashback. But even in the flashback, why would she have done that?
Right? Was she jumping over the balcony or something? Yeah.
Yeah, like was she gonna fly over to Imhotep and Anck-su-namun and be like, "Hey, what did y'all doing?"
Yeah, it was just weird. I feel like it was just it's kind of a slow scene. I mean, there's the flashback fight scene and there and stuff. But it's like they're not really doing anything on that boat for a while, so it's like they just gave them something to do for 10 seconds.
Yeah,
a little bit of action there,
Yeah, most of the action, like a lot of the good stuff takes place in the second act.
Right. Well, it doesn't help that like they have to get from one place to another, and it's 1933, so they don't have.
They can't get there quickly.
Right, they can't get there quickly.
The fastest thing is a train.
Right. So they put him on this flying boat, but even that is kind of slow, and it gives you a little bit of time to have some character development or something. Like there's that little thing between Jonathan and Ardith Bay.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it's just people sitting on a boat waiting to get to their destination. So you gotta throw something in there, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, that's another thing that the first movie has over this one is the pacing. The first movie is so well paced.
Yeah.
And this is not quite as well paced.
No.
I think it has a fantastic first act.
Yeah.
And
I think up until Alex
third act.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, up until Alex gets kidnapped, that's where it kind of pumps the brakes and doesn't really pick back up until they get to Cher.
It's like right now, the scene that I'm watching now is Alex with his kidnappers and the Imhotep's followers and stuff riding camels going somewhere. So it's just like there's a lot of
traveling
going from one area to another. It's not the most exciting middle. It's kind of that middle slump, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like you said, there are some character development moments. We get to see exactly how smart Alex is because he's leaving these breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
For them to see and to follow and know where they're going. He keeps asking for water and using the sand to make mini sandcastles of where the next location is, which I thought was pretty smart.
That is smart.
But like we said, it's just not a whole lot going on other than those small moments. And it small moments aren't an issue, but when you have a movie like this, which is a straightforward adventure movie, and you get to that slump and it's not a whole lot of adventuring going on, it's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, a little bit.
But when they do get to the third act, it does pick back up, and I do enjoy the third act. Because they're racing against time, trying to get Alex to the pyramid before the sun comes up because the bracelet will suck the life out of Alex.
The wearer. Yeah.
Yeah. because of why wouldn't it? Of course, that's what it would do.
Right? Yeah, of course. Because that's
because that's what mummy movies do.
That's what mummy movies do. That's right.
I do like when they get to Amshare and they wake up the little pygmies.
Oh yeah.
That was again very cartoony but fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that boat scene, fun scene, but
bad
not
water
great.
CGI. Yeah,
yeah,
but again,
not great
like
CGI.
you said, we can kind of forgive it because it's water's hard, and back then it was like impossible.
Yeah. The best water CGI I have ever seen is probably in Shang-Chi.
Oh yeah,
that was some really good CGI for water. It looked real, and it's like I said, water is extremely hard to do it. For them to do it so well in that movie was fantastic. Here it looks like plastic.
Yeah. Even when Imhotep's standing in the middle of the river, you can tell it's not. Even that is fake water.
Yeah, all the water is
all
fake.
The water's fake. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only time where the water is real is when Alex is making another like little sand pyramid thing, and Loch Ness comes and steps on it.
Yeah,
that water in that close up shot is weird. Is real, right. But the wide shot is fake.
Yeah.
Get back to the third act, especially a lot of the scenes in the pyramid. That's when it started feeling like a mummy movie again. I really enjoyed the whole element of Rick being like this sacred warrior, and because they addressed it in the first act or the second act when Artist Bay saw the tattoo on Rick's arm, and he said, if I were to say to you I was a lonely traveler from the west, something. It was some riddle.
Right. Oh yeah. And he says,
and Rick knew the answer to the riddle. It's like, how did you know that? It's like, yo, you are a sacred warrior. You're meant for greatness. You're meant to do something. And I liked that, but it was also a bit of a letdown because again, it felt like something that they should have kind of set up in the first movie, just like Evie's abilities, her like her clairvoyance, and like I said, it didn't bother me that it was in this movie. It wasn't much of a payoff because it wasn't a whole lot of setup to it. I did like, however, when it got to that payoff for the Scorpion King and Rick finally killed the Scorpion King. I liked that. I love the scene where he throws the spear and Imhotep like jumps out of nowhere and grabs it. He's like, not so fast.
Not in my house.
Yeah, not in my house. I'm gonna be the one to kill this guy. I did like that, but when Rick finally kills the Scorpion King is awesome. He stabs him through the chest and says, "Go to hell and take your friends with you." It was I thought that was really awesome, and it's a bit of a sad moment with Imhotep. It's not too sad because it's Imhotep. Who cares? But it's a bit of a sad moment because after they resurrect Evie, Imhotep and Rick are about to fall into the pit of hell. They're literally about to go to hell, and they're being pulled by all these souls, and Evie, without hesitation, runs to save Rick, and knocks through the moon, sees Imhotep, and she's like, "Nope, I'm gonna run out the way." Right. And you see, and it's some really good subtle acting on Arnold Vosloo's part, because you can kind of see like the tears well up in his eyes. He's like, "Knocks on the moon." Like it's so melodramatic, but I bought it because of Arnold Vosloo. So
yeah.
He does it so well. He was like, you know what? Forget it. It just gives up.
I like the third act. I think the third act is actually pretty exciting. Yeah. I think the fight between Rick and Imhotep is cool, and I like, when the Scorpion King shows up, and despite the bad CGI, I think that whole sequence is pretty fun, actually, with the Scorpion King. Mm-hmm. And I like, too, how there's that, like, army of the dead, I guess you could say, kind of coming towards Ardith Bay and everything. And then once the Scorpion King is killed, it's like they're just about to meet, yeah. And then it just like they
dissipate into like black sand.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of cool. Actually pretty cool.
I forgot all about the army.
I know. And they look kind of cool too. They're like zombie, like werewolves almost. They're like bipedal dogs,
Yeah, because they look like Anubis.
Yeah.
So I thought they looked pretty cool.
One of my memories of this movie, and it wasn't really a memory, it was actually a memory of somebody talking about this movie. Because did you ever see M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening?
No, I did not.
It's a terrible movie. It's not a terrible spoiler, I suppose, but there's a sequence in that movie where they have to outrun the wind. Yeah, that's just kind of tells you how terrible it is. And I remember somebody making comparisons to this movie and about how they had to outrun the sun. But that scene happened a few minutes ago, and I actually don't mind that because they've been told that if they don't make it to this pyramid before the sun rises on this day, that, the life is going to get sucked out of Alex.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that, and they wanted to make it dramatic, so he's trying to beat the sunrise. So that doesn't actually bother me at all. Like watching that scene, I was like, that was totally fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Outrunning the wind, however, will always be bad.
Yes. How can you outrun the wind?
It's bad. That movie had like really strong potential. Like I remember seeing that in the theater, and then the opening scene, there's like a definite horror element to that movie. People are just like committing mass suicide basically, and you don't know what's going on. There's people like, I remember I've only seen it the one time, so I might be getting part of it wrong. But I think there's like somebody who like sits on a bench in New York to have like a sandwich and like looks up and there's like a building being constructed, and all the construction workers just start like jumping off the building. And she's like, or I don't remember if it's a guy or a girl, but the person who sees it is like, oh my God. And so then there's this whole sequence of like people just like randomly killing themselves. And so as that was during that scene, I remember thinking like, this is very Hitchcockian. And I was like, this is awesome. Yeah. And then the movie went on and I went, this is terrible. It's not a good movie. I have a friend who calls it The Crappening.
I guess I've been spoiled because I know what The Happening is. I know what's causing them to do it. And in theory, it's a cool concept. It's not quite as ridiculous as people are saying it is in my head. I haven't seen the movie. I'm pretty sure it is ridiculous, but from the sound of it, I was like, I could see that.
Right. It's like one of those things that kind of works on paper, and maybe it would have worked better as like a short story or something. But as a movie, it just didn't work.
Yeah,
especially when you have to outrun the wind. Also, I think it's partly Mark Wahlberg. I think Mark Wahlberg can be a very good actor, but in this movie, it was just a lot of him kind of doing that, confused look and like, what do you mean? We gotta, it's just a lot of kind of that whiny, questioning thing that he does. Yeah, so it just didn't work super well.
That reminds me of another movie, a more recent movie, Bird Box.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. That's true. That one was okay though.
Yeah, I remember watching it and not loving it, but not thinking that it was nearly as bad as people said it was.
Yeah, I don't remember disliking it, but I don't necessarily remember, as Michael Rosenbaum would say, it was a heater.
Right down the middle.
Right down the middle. All right, Stu, I'll go first this time with the rating of The Mummy Returns. I think originally, before we started talking about it, I was going to go a little lower than I am. But I think, especially having it on while we're talking about it, I think I can see the good elements of it a little bit more. Plus, like I said, I had a hard time focusing on it the other day. So it was part of that made me think that it wasn't as good as it is, but I think discussing it and everything, I think I'm going to go with 3 out of 5 Scorpion bracelets.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go the same. I think I have this at a 3.5 currently, but after discussing it, I still like it about the same. But this last watch, I kind of, or the last 2 watches for me, I've noticed a lot more of the flaws in the story and the plot. So I think I'm gonna go 3 out of 5, but it's a strong 3 though.
Right.
Yeah, because I still very much enjoy this movie, even though it's not nearly as good as the original. The original just holds a very very special place in my heart. That is one of many comfort movies for me.
Yeah. The first one is a really fun ride. This one is not terrible. It's just not nearly as good.
Yeah.
It's still a decent movie on its own, but compared to the first one, it's a bit of a letdown, I guess.
It's definitely a competent movie.
Yeah,
for sure. I definitely would not call it a bad movie. It kind of irks me that some people call it a bad movie. I know movies are subjective, but like, what's really, other than the CGI, what's really that bad about it? It gets the job done.
Before rewatching it, if you had asked me if it was good or bad, I would have told you it was bad. But upon
you
rewatch,
hadn't seen it in years.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it in forever, and all I could really remember about it was The Rock showing up at the end looking terrible. But upon rewatch, I don't think it's a bad movie.
Nah.
Well, we'd love to know what you think about The Mummy Returns. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can also leave us a comment on our Instagram or tweet at us. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below what you think of the movie. Like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you, however you want to reach out to us. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.